Hi, welcome at Kiki and Joost. I will show you around now. This is their construction site. They have a lot of machines and they make their prototypes and artworks here.
Welcome everyone to this new edition of the InspirID Talkshow. I'm Hannah and this is Evelijn and we're at the beautiful location of Kiki and Joost. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could introduce each other and tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, I'll start with Joost. Okay. This is Joost from Blijswijk. Joost originally comes from Delft, let's say the technical city. So before he went to Design Academy Eindhoven about 24 years ago, he first thought, shall I do TU, a technical university? But to be honest, he thought it was a bit boring. So he decided to go to Design Academy Eindhoven, which was more of a experimental, free spirit. But yet, still of today, you can see that his love for construction is still always in his work, and that the technical mind is still always there.
Okay.
Well, and that's Kiki. So maybe nice to say that we don't only share this workshop and that we sometimes work together, but we also share our life together. We have 2 kids, we're in a house, and so it's really nice and fun to build everything up with the 2 of us. Although we both have our own collections, so we don't sort of interfere with each other's collections, but so we keep that part separate. But what makes Kiki very special, especially in her work, is the playfulness and joy and the sort of poetry you find in her work. It's very storytelling and always very nice, but it can also be with a very strong and personal touch. So don't let you be fooled by the sort of cuteness of the work. It's often also very sort of maybe, you know, sort of in your face and punchy. So that combination is really strong, and I like that very much. It's also very crafted and made by hands and made with a lot of passion.
Okay, thank you.
So you mentioned that you both did the Design Academy, you already told a little bit about Joost, but why did you decide to go to the Design Academy?
Yeah, if I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
I already knew since a child that I had to do something creatively, and somehow subconsciously I already thought I would probably have my own company, because I don't know how to translate in English, but I did VWO, and then at a certain point you had to choose. We didn't have to choose for A or B package, but you could choose anything. But I decided to choose 3 languages and economics in my package, because I thought, okay, that can be handy, it can be more helpful than having chemistry in my package. And then I was always interested already as a kid in modern art, more than classical things, because when my parents took us to churches or other things, I couldn't really relate to that yet back then. Now I can, admire it more than before. And my parents had some friends that were artists, so they taught me some things already about bronze casting and different techniques. And I already, at the age of 16, I had an atelier where I painted on canvas, because my friends back then, they had a band playing music, and in the same house that they used as a rehearsal, I was allowed to have a space to paint, so I hang out a lot there. And then I always thought I would go to art school, but when I visited the open days, I thought it was at the art schools a little bit too chaotic for me in terms of structure or methodology. And then I went to Design Academy, and what I liked is that the spirit was the same as on art schools, very free-minded and playful, but that it was a little bit more structured in terms of education. So that made my choice.
Yeah, and I was so my father is a teacher in arts at a high school. So At my house in the earlier days, there were always clay and pieces of wood, and my father even made a sort of little workshop for the boys. I have two brothers, so we used to, tinker a lot there and make all these kind of things. And so when I had to do a choice for the future, so to say, so I went to the Technical University in Delft to listen to these people that talked about so industrial design and also bouwkunde, we call it architecture. And I thought that was so boring. And so they were talking about, so in the first year you have analysis 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think it went on to 28. And so it was only about math and design methodology. And there was, and then he said, oh, there's an exhibition about the works in the foyer, you can have a look there. So I thought, okay, now we're going to see these works. So I was very anxious to see it. And then there was just one little vitrine with skill models like this, very boring. So I said, so where's the exhibition? So it was a little vitrine. So I was really disappointed. So my whole sort of future vision went into the bin. And then I went to art schools, and then also Kiki said it was maybe a little bit too, well, maybe vague, or if you asked people something like, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know, let's see. And then at the academy here in Eindhoven, everything sort of, came together. So people knew what they were doing, but still they were experimenting with pieces of wood and clay. And I saw, these people are, experimenting and making, and so that was like a fish in the water.
Okay. We also have some questions of students, and one, Leanne is asking, how did you experience the Design Academy?
Personally, I really enjoyed it, but I was also lucky to be in the department back then called Leisure, which was the most free-minded department. It was then led by Liedewij Edelkoort and Lisbeth Innethout before they became directors. And we had very free-minded tutors from all kind of disciplines. And the nice thing about it was that you could really play around and explore your own identity and what you found important yourself. And then, of course, after that, you would narrow it down to something more concrete. But I really enjoyed that you really had, the ability and the space to explore in all kind of fields, not restricted to anything.
So this last week there was quite a lot to do about all the tutors at the Design Academy and how they sort of misbehaved maybe. We didn't experience it like that was said in the newspapers, but still it was a tough school to do, tough education, because it takes quite a lot of you to complete the whole study. I think we started in the first year with maybe about 160 or 170 people, and after the first year like half was still there, and in the end there were maybe like 55 that made it to the end, which I think isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it's also that you really have to go for it, and it's maybe a sort of way of life to do this academy. But on the other hand, there was a sort of, with all the other students, there was this kind of almost like a, how do you call it? Community feeling, like you were all striving for the same thing, and it was really nice. You were always there at the academy, working till the workshop closed to sort of finalize your project, and then quickly go home and go on.
Also we all helped each other. Like I was, for example, somebody that was quite good at planning, so I was already ready before the end term, and then my friends were still, working in the night, so I just went to help them to finish their thing. So that was kind of the mentality, which was back then at least the case.
And really sort of do-it-yourself mentality. Like we used to make these exhibitions with a group of students, and to really make something nice of the whole It really felt like a sort of experience, the whole
And
student
also, I
talk.
remember that already back then, which is now about 23 years ago or something, we were already, thinking about, for example, the food culture of the future, how supermarkets should look like. And we actually had quite extravagant but foreseeing concepts that are still not live as today, but I think it will happen in the future. So we wouldn't just play, but we would really explore all kind of things that you find in life that can become better in the end.
Okay. And did you also end the Design Academy on the same time?
Well,
or?
Kiki was just half a year before I graduated, but we were in the same graduation, which actually was the first graduation show that was held in Eindhoven. Before that, it was always held in Amsterdam for some reason, to gain a big audience. And Liedewij Edelkoort was then the principal director of the academy. She took the whole graduation show to Eindhoven, and that was actually the start of the whole Dutch Design Week. So the year after...
I remember that you were very angry then.
Yeah, because I thought... well, it was true. The first year, there was no one coming to the...
Not true.
Very little people, coming to the... It wasn't like this. Now, 350,000 people come to Eindhoven to visit the Dutch Design Week. And back then, it was only from Wednesday till Sunday. And there were times, like in the afternoon, there was just no visitor at all. So we were just, I think we were just playing around and drinking a lot of beer. Which was also fun, but not necessarily a good thing.
Well, really nice to hear something about your background and also times of studying and not having Corona, because we do it online now, and would really love to experience a community like that, but I hope it will come back.
Yeah.
So we have a question from our students, that's Tom, and he asked, how did you start building your business after finishing your study at the Design Academy?
Yeah, that's a good one, because actually when we finished, it was also crisis, economical crisis, so no work, no jobs, nothing. And also design was not as big as it is now. In Eindhoven, I think there was maybe one designer, Studio Job, and then in the whole of Netherlands you had Marcel Wanders, Hella Jongerius, Jurgen Bij, Ineke Hans and a few more, and that was kind of it. And now the Netherlands is full of designers, so you cannot imagine. So it was a very hard time to start. But so we decided, okay, we will start our own workshop then and our own company. And I lived anti-squat at that moment. And we just took a garage box. We were not allowed, but we just did it to work. There was no heating, so in winter the paint wouldn't dry. And just whenever we earned a little bit of money, we bought some tools and some machines, and that's how we gradually built our own workshop and built actually our own portfolio. And from there we went to Milan, to the famous Salone del Mobile, which you weren't invited for. You just had to pay all the money you had on your bank account to rent the space. But that's in the end how everything grew gradually.
Yeah, immediately after we graduated, we had the feeling like we don't want to be sort of anonymous designers. So we really wanted to sort of speak out ourselves and to be known, or at least get asked for commissioned work because of what we did and who we were. So we tried to put a lot of personality in the works. At the beginning, that's of course very hard to do and also quite challenging. But during the years, we made this body of work that people get to know us by, and so it got a little bit more easy. But it still is quite tough at some points to sort of come up with new works that people recognize and to get an audience to you and to get known and to also sell some items and to earn some money, because life isn't cheap, but it shouldn't be always the first goal. Our goal is always to sort of be happy with what we do and to create new works that satisfy us and
that you think are relevant, and it can be very different. One time it can be very autonomous works, but another time it can be very specific, like the solar panels we designed, which will be on the market probably in the third quarter. So it varies a lot, but the starting point is always that it needs to be relevant, that we see an added value in a project and not the money. That is never the goal. That's also what we try to teach our kids, that they can design their own lives and that they shouldn't focus on money. That they should focus on other things.
Because also, before you can never tell if something will be economic success. So sometimes the most sort of, you think, okay, this piece is gonna sell, I'm quite sure, and nothing will happen. And the other thing, which you thought, okay, this is nothing, but I show it anyway, that becomes a success. So you never know.
And at the same time, I think it's important to stay very flexible in your mind, because especially if you work like us, but I think for every human being, because what we see in this pandemic, you see that the people who are most flexible, they don't feel like they are in prison. They always see opportunities, and that's how it works for us as well. You just go on, even if things completely change, like the last year, you always have to reinvent yourself, because the world has to be reinvented as well. So the world is constantly changing and also needs to change. So I think if you keep being flexible and from a certain perspective don't have too high expectations, and on the other end you have very high expectations of what you want to strive for, then I think you will always find a way.
Yeah, really good mindset. I was wondering, how do you collaborate, and what's the contribution in each other's work or results, or how do you structure that?
Yeah, the funny thing is that we most of the times don't really work together on a project. So some projects we did it and we still do, but most of the projects are either Kiki's or mine. But the funny thing is that we share our life together. We see the same movies. We go to the same museums whenever they are open again. And so we see the same things, and we see from each other that we get inspired maybe by the same things or with the same ideas. But
I think that is subconsciously, it's not consciously.
But then you see it in the end, when you show it, you say, hey, we did about the same, but in our own way. So for example, last year I started to draw a lot and make a lot of collage works. And Kiki started to make collages as well, but I did it with sheets of metal, and Kiki did it with sort of leftover pieces of fabric that were still here.
Yeah, and we brainstorm a lot together about each other's projects, because we both have a very strong own identity in our works, and we don't want to mix that, and we also can't mix that, because our working methods are very different and our personas are very different. But that gives an added value, that you have always somebody else looking very specific over your shoulder, and also being very honest.
And critical.
And
so
critical.
You support each other by giving inspiration and helping out. And
and also being honest and very critical. So you shouldn't tell each other, yeah, that's nice, go on. No, it doesn't help someone. It only helps if you're very critical and think with the other.
Yeah, and that's
not in your own mind, but that you sort of with your own personality sort of replace yourself in the other and think not for you but for the other.
And that is maybe also, I don't know if you have teachers that you find very strict, for example, but there are always teachers that are a bit more strict. But in the end, I think it's about being critical for the good cause. I think they do it because of the love of the student, because they want you to grow and to get the best out of yourself, not for themselves.
Yeah.
So if ever a teacher might seem strict to you, I think this is the reason, because it comes from a good place.
If a teacher doesn't tell you anything, he probably doesn't really care, and that's really a bad sign, I guess.
Yeah. But what is also interesting to say is that once an artist also told me, when I was just in the beginning of my career, I told that artist that it takes a long time, it's not always easy. And then she said, she said, Kiki, it takes about 10 years before you are at the start of something that you feel happy with and that you can explore. And it is actually really true. From my experience, after about 10 years, you have some really interesting projects, some interesting craft people you can work with, some interesting brands and galleries, and then still you shouldn't sit still. You should keep on, changing with the world that is changing.
Yeah, and be open and willing to learn all the time. I mean, our school wasn't finished when we graduated. I mean, the whole life is a learning school, and you can get so much out of it if you're open and free-minded. And so for example, we sort of got to transition to a more digital world also after our graduation. We're super old, of course. And whenever we graduated, there was no laser cutting, 3D printing, CNC routing, things like that. So but of course you have to also adapt and see those new methods and to start working with it and see them also as possibilities. And I think the funny thing is we are very open, and we see a 3D printer just like a hammer or a saw. It's just a tool that you can use. It's not a necessity, and it's not the only way to produce models and things, but it's just a tool.
Yeah, for us, technology in general is not something which is the start of a project, never. I would rather say it's maybe first an analog way of working, but technology it can be a tool, and we are not at all against tech, but it's just, you always have to counterbalance and always have to think, does it make sense to 3D print this now? We use a 3D printer when it has a benefit from another tool, but not just because it's a 3D printer. And same for laser cutting or working with your hands with the blowtorch. It really depends on the means and the project.
Yeah. So sometimes at a point we had an intern that cut some cardboard, and then she drew it in Illustrator and put it in our little cardboard plot machine to cut it out. And then we said, that's no use to put it in a computer. It's just about looking and just cut it. Just by hand. It can be so simple. You don't have to digitalize everything you do. It's still also your hands can do a lot. Our son of 4 years old yesterday came up with a beautiful word. I want to share it. He came up with the word techniets, which means like tech nothing. I thought it was a beautiful word. It's sort of invented. So I'm adopting that word.
So do you also see this in your design process, that you're like mostly crafting with your hands and?
Of course we use the computer as well, and we use 3D programs and other kind of technologies, but mainly we try to craft a lot, because actually you get a deeper understanding then of technical issues and problems, and also of materials, and from there you can really dive deeper and explore. And then it can always happen that you need that or that machine, but I think it shouldn't be the base of your explorations.
And it's also nice to... Our studio is also like a laboratory where we can work and experiment and try things out. And for example, my tinkering lamps, they originally came from me soldering some pieces of metal and trying some things with little light bulbs and stuff. And then it sort of stopped there. That was all I could do here in the workshop. But working together with Mooi, the firm, gave the possibilities to add all these extra things. So now so it's in production at Mooi, and they casted these beautiful diffusers for the light, and they added this technical thing which I cannot do in the workshop. So now the coating, the outside coating is the minus of the electricity, and the framework is the plus. So there's no wire or whatever. It's quite high tech. which you cannot do here, but the base of it is just, me soldering some stuff.
If you wouldn't have started tinkering in the workshop, the lighting would never have existed, and also not the technology around it. I think it's always a good example that in the past Philips would have some nerds working for them. I mean it in a positive sense, and they had, I think, 1 day a week or 1 day a month that they could just experiment without any fixed goal, without any direction. And that's how they invented the DVD player, all kind of things. When you really have the freedom, when you don't think about the end result, then this is where new ideas come up.
Yeah. So you just start on a project and then see how it goes, or do you already start a project with some kind of idea? Or?
Yeah, most of the times you of course have some ideas, so your brain never stops. So you have always some ideas in the back of your head simmering, like what should I do with it? And then you read and you look and you let it simmer a bit more. And once you have the feeling, now I can stop making, or can stop delaying the making of it or experimenting, I think that's a good moment where you sort of bring it to life and you start really with materials in your hands and to give it a material.
But it really also depends. I think what is interesting is to learn yourself, to let yourself guide by the process and not the other way around. That you don't completely direct the process, but the process directs you. And this is something which is very difficult, and which you can, I think, only do when you have a little bit more experience and you trust yourself that it will come out well in the end. But I think that's where you can be most creative. But, for example, I'm also working with a big architecture firm from Amsterdam on a social housing project for Amsterdam North, and together with a landscape designer. So it's actually a concrete project. We know who will live there, what the functions are, etc. But then still, the challenge is to not narrow yourself down too much in the beginning, but to first be very open and to investigate everything, and then at a certain point you go narrowing down. But you want to come up with something authentic and surprising, and when you are too fixed on all the functions and everything from the beginning, you are never going to get there.
And you have to get away from your first initial thought about something. So whenever you hear an assignment or a word, you automatically have a link in your head to something else, or you have an image already in your head. And it's a good thing to put that image in the fridge or in the bin, or at least away from your thinking, because it can block you also. Your first idea can block all these better ideas that come up.
And also what I think is interesting when you work with your hands, either making things in the workshop or sketching, that you can still have many different interpretations of what you see. If you draw something in 3D in the computer already, then there's actually no space left for the imagination. And when you have more space for that, you can go further and come up with even better things. And then all the way in the end, we make a technical drawing in the computer when the idea is fixed.
But also with model making, for example, and making something in real, if you make little sketch models and you start to paint them nicely and they become to look nice, you shouldn't do that, because something is already so fixed that you feel sorry for this little model to throw it away.
Yeah, and in the process, the little mistakes that happen or things, this often leads to actually very good ideas.
So if you put too much time in one little model, just as a sketch, it's a bad sign, because you cannot throw that away. So you have to get rid of that and make something new, and make something again and again and again. And after you made about 50 models, then you can choose, okay, maybe I did like the first, but maybe not. But then you have a choice, and a good choice. So if sometimes you really get stuck into something and there's no way out of it. It's like a labyrinth you get sort of lost in. And so it's a good way, it's a good thing to stay open-minded and not to be focused on one thing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, thing. Yeah, when I look at myself, I'm maybe a little bit too already narrowed down in the beginning, and I think that's really a good.
It's hard to get out of that.
Yeah, because the what you say is that is kind of the most easy way for yourself, or what you trust the most, because then you know where you are going, and it's a bit scary to leave it open still. And it is true, when you leave everything open, what we try to do, it's more of a struggle, because it's always a struggle, the creative process. It's not that everything goes smooth and fluently, but I think that is part of a creative process, that it is also a bit of a struggle until you are there, and then when you are there, you are very relieved.
But then it's also it's a good thing to be open on that, and for example, speak to a teacher like, I think I'm totally stuck with this idea, what can I do? Because I think there's something there, but I want to be open. So I think to speak about it in that kind of way, you open up yourself, and you open yourself for discussion and new influences and new inspiration. So I think it's always a good thing.
And a good teacher will be very happy to help you out and to open it up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for these literally live lessons. I think and our students learn a lot. But I think it's time for a little break, so we will see you after the break. welcome back. We're now going more into detail into creativity and aesthetics. So first, I would like to ask Kiki, what is your definition of creativity and aesthetics?
Ooh,
If you
that's
can
a
maybe
difficult
state that shortly.
Creativity, I think, is to be able to solve any kind of problem, even if you don't have knowledge about it yet. And aesthetics, I think that is very personal, actually. Maybe you should answer that one.
Okay.
Well, I think creativity, in my point of view, is also that you think in a way that no one has thought before. So that can be also technological. It can be in the chemistry, or it can be in arts. It can be in anything. Also, you see that football players that are very good are often very creative players that just give a different kind of passing or things like that. So that's, for me, that's creativity. And aesthetics, it's something that makes you sort of emotional, and that works differently for everyone. It's like music is very abstract, and some music, you like and you hate, but if you get a sort of goosebumps, how is it called? Then you can feel whether it's sort of good or bad.
Yeah.
I think aesthetics have to do with beauty, but what beauty is different for everyone. But for sure, if you don't have ugliness, you can also not define beauty.
But for sure, it's something more special, what you don't see every day, and where you get sort of intrigued by. And if you see it, you stop and you look a little bit more.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so our student Leo also asked about this definition, and also how has this changed over the years? Can you maybe expand on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
How it changed for us, or in general?
Ooh, maybe for you together.
Okay.
Personally, I think I'm much more open to all kind of aesthetics today as I was when I just graduated. I remember when I was on Design Academy, I thought everything that Memphis made was quite ugly and non-aesthetical, where I see it in a totally different perspective now.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me personally, how it changed, I think when I just was graduated, I was really working on the sort of archetypical shapes and how things looked in the past, and give a sort of reaction to it. And for some years I've been trying to make a sort of quite a complex system with all little parts that went into each other without screw and glue, to sort of not copy that, but to capture the same kind of feeling in a quite technological way. It's almost like a Lego block system. And I think that that gave me a sort of sense, and also a kind of training on classic objects and how they looked and how they should look. And now I can get, since I've done that, I think I can get, much more free and not be sort of restricted to classical and archetypical shapes. So I can be much more free and abstract, and also more rough, I can say.
Okay, so it opened up for you,
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really nice. And next to that, your craftsmanship, so the techniques or the materials you used, how did that change over the years? You already said that technology became a bigger thing, so you learned to use that, but also just as an option, not really as the end goal.
Yeah, basically it didn't really change. The only thing is that we have now much more opportunities to work with different crafts, also very high-end ones, through companies that we don't have in-house, for example, because we are invited for some, like the crystals that you see in the back of the studio, that is hand-blown in France by a very high-end crystal company.
Did you design them on paper or digitally?
On paper, and I visited the factory, and I talked a lot with the craftsmen. Same as when we work with Murano glass from Venice. We are just about to make a new series with them, and this is very, very high craft, which you cannot do yourself. It's really something different. But now we have more opportunities for
Yeah,
that, because we have a bigger network, basically.
But at the same time, I was using the laser cutting before much more than I do now. So I was laser cutting to create these very precise objects that slot in each other. And now we bought this plasma cutter. It's actually quite a high-tech machine, but you can cut through metal like it's like a knife through butter. It's great to just, cut pieces of steel with your hand and weld them together and to create pieces like on the spot. So you don't have really to think about it and to visualize it in the computer. You just let it happen.
You use it more as a prototyping tool now.
In the end, it's not even prototyping because it's the actual product is really made
But
like this.
for example, with that you don't have a fixed drawing, but you just start like a sculptor, and it proceeds. And that's what we often call thinking hands. That when we work, you think at the same time, and then you've done something, you can reflect on it, and you go back, which is where the body and the mind are in balance all the time. So it's not just thinking or just doing, but it's really a combination.
And you see it in real. You can, before you cut a piece of metal, you can cut something of a piece of cardboard and see whether it's okay or not, and you can, react on what you do. It's also like making music, jamming with some other people, working together and see what happens and what comes up.
If I
It's
can
more
compare it with one thing, we are short on time, but what's important to mention is that it's the same as when you garden. I'm also a gardener. By gardening and understanding how that natural process works, it gives you a deeper understanding about nature and in general our environmental problems and also solutions for it. So that's kind of the same comparison, if you understand what I mean.
I don't really understand the environmental aspect. Maybe.
Well, when you understand how gardening works and how, for example, growing food works and what is needed for that, actually just very little, you also understand. You understand, and if you understand how you can grow things and what the problems are and the solutions, you know also how to solve certain things in the world.
Yeah, okay.
and
The
that you need
process,
and in dry periods you see it now that you need a lot of water to make it grow, that you need a lot of sunlight, so you cannot grow a forest just anywhere. You need a lot of sunlight and you need a lot of fresh air to let things grow. So it's all it's all coming together in this thing. So that's also, if you take one aspect of life, but also of design, you just not limited. You limit yourself to one aspect of it, but you start to see a lot more that has to do about it. So whenever you make something very small, it can also become architecture. And if you do a little gardening, you may be able to solve the world problem.
Small part.
Food for thought. So we got one question from the students, from Sebastian, and he said, or asked, what do you find the best way to improve your creativity and aesthetic skills? Do you have any tips for that? I think you already mentioned a lot of just making and reflecting.
I think it's very good, at least that's what I, for myself, try to do all the time, to train the inner keeping the inner child alive all the time.
And traveling, we've been traveling a lot to, to South America, to Southeast Asia, to Africa, and you learn a lot from other cultures. It's not like a direct inspiration, but it sort of frees your mind that there's something else than your own little environment where you live in, and that you can take inspiration from everything around the world, but also everything in the past. So I think that's important, to stay open as possible.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? Keeping your inner child alive, is that also like staying as open as you can be, same as with traveling, or you have different methods?
Well, everybody has been a child, and kids, I know that from experience, have a very strong intuition. So in fact, every human being has that. Only a lot of grown-ups, they have lost it somewhere. And I think if you can, follow your intuition, it will lead you as a compass to all kind of good directions. So to keep that child alive is just to keep your inner joy alive, I think, and to keep being curious and questioning all the time. Why is this? Why is that?
The older you grow, the older you get, the more you get used to things that are already there. So, you're told, like, this is a water cup. It's a water cup. But if no one would have told you, it could be anything. And so if you give a child another piece and you say it's a water cup, it takes that for granted. So to keep sort of that in mind, that everything can be a water cup, as long as you sort of believe in it yourself. And if you just say it, it is.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm kind of curious, do you do a sort of design experience also, experiments with your kids, or like you already mentioned, like you told them like it's not about money, or do you already educate them in some way, or?
No, we don't do that consciously, because we don't want to put them into any direction. The only thing is that we teach them about how things work. They see how vegetables grow in the garden. They come here in the workshop. They know what welding is. So they see everything. We don't do it very much literally on purpose, but they get to
just
know
involved
things.
Yeah, and we hope that they get the idea of creating your own life and to create your own environment. We experienced it once when we were a guest at very nice designers in France, and they have a very big chateau. But when they had bought the chateau, they didn't have any money for their whole, the whole interior. So what they did is they start painting and create everything themselves. But it was all paintings and cardboard. So whenever you saw a lamp, it looked like a beautiful marble lamp with golden details, but actually it was just paper. They really created their own very luxurious interior, and it was so beautiful, because it's just about your imagination and how you do things.
To think about our son, when he was 5 years old or 4 years old, they had a theme at school, at primary school, which was about textile, and it ended after a month with a fashion show, and they told the kids, you can dress up as nice as you want. So then in the morning, I asked him, what do you want to wear? And he made of a garbage bag, he made a police costume. It didn't really look like a police costume, but in his mind it was a police costume. And from blue cardboard he made a hat. So he took that on, and then he went into the classroom, and all the kids were dressed up like in their Sunday clothes. And I said, let's see what they're going to say. And then there was one kid which was a bit older, and he told him, Puck, what are you wearing? And then he said, don't you see that? It's a police costume. Very, very proud. And this is exactly what it is about. It's about the imagination, and not about, what it costs to have something on, or...
Yeah, that's beautiful. Another question. Do you look at function or interaction when designing? Maybe you already answered the function, but maybe more about interaction. Do you sometimes design something that the user can interact with, or maybe not that tangible?
I have one project literally called physical interaction. Okay. I worked also together with somebody that studied at Technical University, that when you blow, the light goes on, and with another thing, when you light... what's een vuursteen?
A flint.
A flint. Then it works as a dimmer. And so, sometimes we use these kind of things. And in general, it's also about a kind of emotional interaction. When there is an emotional attachment to something, I think you will be much more, wat is voorzichtig? Cautious with it. And also, you treat your environment better.
And of course, the way I started my No Screw No Glue project was about this. So I really wanted to show people, like, this chair is built up of 5 elements which you can slot in each other. So it was sort of learning or teaching the customer how to do these things. And now it's that sort of layer went away, but it's still, of course, there. That it's built up of all these elements. So it gives some kind of surprising element to it, and also, like, is this really all, these little pieces? Can you really take it apart?
You also have the clock, the No Screw No Glue clock of Cortland steel, that some people buy it when it's not rusted yet, so they take it home, they put it in the garden, then they let the rain go over it, and then when they think it looks good, they bring it here and we put a layer of lacquer over it. So
put a clockwork in it, so it gives a sort of personality in the material also.
Nice.
Okay. Leanne was asking, how do you see TU students and Design Academy students work together maybe in the future? Or do you also work together with, you mentioned?
Yeah, I work together then with Serge. I don't know if he teaches also at the TU, lighting technician. But I think, the students could very well work together because I think they can really learn from each other. Because the students at Design Academy, they might sometimes have a lack of technology in a certain field, and you might benefit from their maybe a little bit more free spirits. So I think actually it could be very nice to have them work together more. I don't know if it happens already.
I think it's super necessary, because what you see now is that often like the aesthetic layer is like put over it as a little sauce in the end, and it doesn't. It's just an extra flavor. You know, you should start with integrating the aesthetics and what a product actually is at the beginning. So the working together from the start is essential to create very good and also new things. So you cannot separate it and bring it together at the very end. That is just that's the sauce I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have any plans for the future how you would change your way of working or working with other kind of disciplines or?
Well, actually, it's constantly changing, and you're constantly learning. For example, I have this solo exhibition in the Dutch Textile Museum, and I worked together with a sonographer for about 2 years to prepare that exhibition and design it. And from the process, there came all kind of things that I designed for the exhibition in not as a standalone thing originally. So I also worked for the first time on a kind of video art that I never did before, because it was, for one space we needed something like that.
Yeah.
And then I already have 2 people that are buying, that asked me, I never thought of it before myself, can I buy it as video art? But when we did that movie, I already thought, wow, this is interesting. I would like to work more also on these kind of things. And it grows organically. It's not something, I don't have a set goal, although I still want to design the supermarket of the future at one point. But next from that, it just, it grows along the way.
Yeah, and I think we both want to create more environments that are sort of total design, that has like that you include the walls and the ceiling and the floor and the whole idea of this space in the sort of the whole concept in one go. So I will have a solo exhibition. It's delayed because of the COVID. It starts in July in the Centraal Museum in Utrecht, where I also take all the walls and the ceilings with the whole design of the spaces, and I create 4 different sort of environments for it. And I think
also with music.
Also with the music and videos. So I think we go more in a sort of total environments than just one single object.
Yeah. Okay, sounds cool.
So music also appeals to your hearing senses. What kind of senses do you incorporate in your designs?
So I think we both work very visually, but also very emotionally. So I think the work should sort of work on your emotion, or maybe even the memory you have to some things. So that sort of basic emotions.
But for me, it's also the touch, because I really work very specifically on textures and materials. So for me, it would be definitely also the touch of things. But also like this project, physical interaction, it's about working with the elements, with fire, with wind, and the other one is about gravity. So I also incorporate that in a different way sometimes.
And also the materials and how we treat them. So not just the basic materials, but can we do something with, so for example, the rusting, and if you do the same things with bronze or or other metals, you get beautiful patines on materials. So
But here
also the aging
in the
and
space where we are, it's also about the smell, because the wood has still a very wonderful smell, and that's also one of the big advantages of building in wood, next to the fact that it's much more sustainable and healthy. But the smell would not be something, I mean, for me, like these kind of smell experiences in the space or something which are like externally, it doesn't work. The smell here comes from the material, and that's an added value, but I would never just add a smell separately from it.
Okay. Maybe you can both pick like one project or artwork that you created that you are most proud of.
from each other, or
Oh,
Kiki?
no, do
I have to
it
think.
for yourself. I
Okay.
think, yeah.
That's difficult, because you know why it's difficult, because we create we do these projects where we create more than one piece for each project, and
Or a
every time we
collection.
do a project feels like giving birth to something, so we have a lot of babies, so to speak.
Well, I would think our own workshop that we built
Yeah.
by ourselves,
You mean downstairs?
where we are now.
Oh,
the
okay,
whole
the whole
thing,
building.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, maybe that's. Yeah, well, I think I think if you see everything together and the things that we created, I think they all are very personal, but they fit very well together. So, for example, like an exhibition where you can put things together and see a sort of overview, that's maybe the thing we are most proud of, or at least where I get very proud of. We see those things together as
That's
a
maybe because
story.
you see the evolution of your work and life.
Yeah, and it forms a sort of total story and a sort of total emotion where you sort of get lost in, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. I understand that. So to finalize, maybe you can give us a life lesson or something that you wish someone had told you before. To
That there are no mistakes to take in life and in work.
Well, you can learn from mistakes; they're very important.
Yeah.
So if there's this one thing: if you don't make mistakes, you usually make nothing. So whenever you make something, you make mistakes, and you should embrace it and learn from it.
So in fact, mistakes don't exist.
But now a life lesson. That is one.
yeah, well, thank you for that. Do you want to conclude, or shall I do it?
Yeah, I would say really thank you for this cool talk show and a lot of information and tips, and it was really nice. And I saw that you organize a design open in the nearby future.
Yeah, exactly. From 13th till 17th of June, we organize a third edition of Design Open. So it's 5 days. There is a website now where you can go and you can see who all joins. And now it's already 30 studios that join. You know, depending on the corona rules, you can either make a reservation or see if you can go in. And I would encourage everybody to go around, because I think the number will even grow, and we will also all exhibit some work of Design Academy students who didn't have a platform in the Design Week because it was cancelled.
Yeah.
I think the nice thing about it that also this flexibility we talked about earlier that you need to have whenever something happens like this COVID thing that's going on, that you have to be flexible and find new ways also to present yourself and to find new ways also of selling and presenting your work. So that's why we started the whole Design Open movement, you can call it. A couple of times a year. We stay also very loyal and open to the Design Week, of course. That's a very big event, but we also like the fact that with some companies and friends from Eindhoven, we started this sort of also group feeling, like really the community that creates this. So be open to visit us.
Yeah. So I would say students come to this beautiful place.
More than welcome.
We also have a present.
Very nice.
Thank you.
That's very sweet.
definitely will. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
No problem. Thank you for this nice talk show.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Good luck.
I must say you had very good questions, all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Good luck.
And for the other students, keep the InspirID Instagram. Keep attention. to the
Also start
Instagram.
follow if you want to know
Start
more.
following,
Follow
yeah.
us on Instagram,
Yeah.
Kiki and Joost, and yes, meet
Yeah.
you there.
Students are inspired.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.